Hey Kevin, how you doing?
Hey Richard, how are you?
Yeah, good. Long time no see. How's things?
Never a dull moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
never a dull moment. How are you doing?
Yeah. I'm all good. Are you still in Colorado?
I am in Colorado. Yeah, I live in the
Yeah.
foothills just above Boulder. At least that's where my bills come. But I find
Yeah.
myself on airplanes and in hotels. Morpheus has a footprint in El Segundo, and then we've got a big presence in Dresden, Germany. So as you can imagine, that has me bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah, you getting geared up for the event circuit, DC and Colorado and
Yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah. So we've got Space Symposium down in Colorado Springs. We've got Satellite 25 um, out in DC. There's a small sat event that is now happening in Amsterdam. Uh,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, small sat Europe.
Oh, right. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So there's been, small sat in Utah traditionally in Logan, but now they're also doing one in Europe because the demand's been so high. So that's coming up in May, a time frame, I think. So yeah, there's about one every month. There's an InQtel CEO summit in Palm Springs
Yeah.
that I'll be going to. So yeah, there's about one event per month for the next 4 or 5 months.
I got to say, SmallSat's probably my favorite. I mean, I love
It's good.
satellite. I love satellite in DC. I'm pretty devastated I won't make it this year because it's one of my favorite events. But I love SmallSat. I'm kind of excited that it's in Salt Lake because it just makes the travel so much easier and
Absolutely.
better hotels and all the rest of it. I'm sure if you've been to the event is amazing, but yeah, the travel there is hard and getting a decent hotel and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff
it's
can be a
tricky. We
challenge.
uh we we did an Airbnb this past summer, but we couldn't get it in Logan. We had to stay in Ogden. And it was an hour drive each morning and each
Yeah,
evening, which is not what you want to be doing.
yeah.
So I'm glad they moved it to Salt Lake. And actually, I'm going to um, an event that is affiliated with EVONA on Friday. I'm going to
Oh,
the
okay.
Deep Tech, yeah, the Deep Tech on the
Deep Tech on
Range
the
event.
range. Awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So I've been connected to Steve Finder for a little while, and he and I have been just talking about a range of things over the past couple weeks, and he let me know about this event and invited me to come along, and I actually just booked my travel this morning, so looking forward to being there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, enjoy it. Unfortunately, again, I won't get to make the trip, but Jack and Tom, who you may have met before, my two business partners, the other co-founders of EVONA, will be there with Steve as well. So yeah, sounds like it's gonna be an
Okay.
awesome day. So enjoy it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So are you over in the UK or are
Yeah,
you
I'm
here
over
in
in
the
the
States?
UK. Yeah, I'm over in
Okay.
the UK at the moment. Yeah, my two business partners, so Tom and Jack, relocated to Florida about 2 or 3 years ago. Now they're based in St. Pete.
Got it.
Um, So yeah, and then me and Ryan, the other two co-founders, are here in the UK. So we've got the office here in the southwest of the UK, in a place called Bristol, and then the
Okay.
US offices out there. So yeah, awesome. Hope to see you on the circuit. But thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I should let you know before we get started
Yep.
is we've made some changes at Morpheus, and I'd actually
Okay.
like to use this podcast as an opportunity to make a bit of an announcement, if you're
Yeah,
okay with
awesome.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so here's the news. Our CEO Daniel Bach is has stepped down and is now the CTO and managing director of our German office,
Okay.
and the board has selected me to step into the CEO role.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
so
Awesome
that's
news.
that's fresh news as of the board meeting was Wednesday of last week, and we rolled it out to the workforce yesterday. So this is like brand new. I don't even have business cards yet.
Yeah.
I like it feels a little awkward even just saying it that way. Like
Yeah.
I've,
Yeah.
I was reading through the questions and um, it's always hard to think about like biggest accomplishments and how you talk about great things that you've done or you've achieved without
Yeah.
sounding boastful. So what I'll probably do is use that question as sort of the setup for communicating that news, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Congratulations. That's awesome news. I guess to take that step back and we'll get there. We'll get to Morpheus and everything else in compliments. It'd be great, I guess, for our listeners if you could start off with how you ended up in the space industry. I guess back from your early career, where you started, grew up, all that kind of stuff. And I think into your earlier career, I think it was at Boeing,
Sure.
and how you kind of made that transition from early stage career into the space industry.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks first off for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have the conversation today. So, the question was about my sort of origin story, and it's everyone has oftentimes people have unique origin stories, and I'd say mine is somewhat one of a kind. So, I studied geology at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And I studied geology because I really enjoyed the outdoors. I liked being out in the mountains, and I found it fascinating to understand how our surroundings were created over millennium. And got involved in geology, was interested, but then my last year of undergraduate studies, I got involved in a class on focused on remote sensing. And the professor of remote sensing was an expert in a field called hyperspectral imagery. And I immediately was attracted to this because it was sort of the intersection of science and math and physics, but with real world applicability. And there were a number of ways that this data and this technology could be used to create an impact for people here on Earth. And the original application of hyperspectral imagery was to search for indicator materials that would help exploration companies find highly valuable minerals like gold. And so, in summary, hyperspectral imagery, at least the primary application for my professor at the University of Colorado, was to help him find gold.
Yeah.
And I found that very interesting. And so I sat in the front row, I raised my hand a lot, I asked lots of questions, I would talk to him after class. I said, listen, I really want to get into a career in this field. How do I do it? And he said, well, you should take an internship in my lab and learn as much as you can over the next year. And I'll do what I can to help you once you graduate. So I got an internship working in his lab, taking spectral measurements of soil samples for hours on end. And it was pretty boring, but I learned a lot about data collection and how to actually take the data that we were collecting and interpret it, and then understand how certain soil types would impact the foundation of structures around the Front Range of Colorado. So got involved in hyperspectral, I graduated, and then I was looking for my first job. And it's hard as an undergraduate student who has a degree in geology with an emphasis on hyperspectral to just find a job in that field.
Yeah.
Fortunately, one night I was having dinner with my father and my uncle, and my uncle was a three-star in the Air Force. And I got to talking to him, and he said, well, geology degree, you could maybe get a job at USGS. I might have some contacts in the Forest Service. And we got to talking, we were exploring different ideas. None of them seemed to stick. And then near the end of the night, he said, do you know anything about hyperspectral imagery? I said, well, yeah, I'm shocked you even know that word. Like, how do you know about hyperspectral imagery? And he said, well, Kevin, I've worked in the US government for decades, and we're tuned into all sorts of interesting technologies. Why don't you send me your resume? And so I sent him my resume, and a week later, I was contacted by a recruiter from Boeing in Washington, D.C. And they said, hey, we got your resume. We are hiring for junior level spectral scientists to do a series of projects on multispectral and hyperspectral imagery. Are you interested? I said, of course, that sounds amazing. And I flew out for the interview, met with the general manager of the department. We got along well. And a week later, I had a job offer to move to Washington, D.C. to, work on spectral projects for Boeing. Fast forward, they got me cleared. They stuck me on site at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, where I did a series of different software development projects and data analysis projects, all focused on spectral imagery. Boeing really stepped up and helped me with my master's program at George Mason University, where I focused on spectral imagery, and that's really how I got started. And so it was a fortuitous conversation with my uncle over a dinner, and he happened to drop the right question at the right time, and then was able to broker an introduction to one of his former colleagues from his time at the Air Force, who then worked at Boeing, and they passed the resume along, and it landed in the right person's hands, and I got the interview, and that's how we got started.
Awesome. So you moved to DC.
I did. Yeah, I moved to Washington, D.C. from I was actually living in Manhattan at the time, uh, looking for a job there.
Yeah.
And yeah, moved down to DC and lived there for about 5 years.
Nice. That's two of my it's kind of off topic, but it's two of my favorite cities, Boulder and DC. I absolutely
Okay.
love those two cities in the US. So the fact that you've got to live in both is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I feel very fortunate. They're great places. Boulder doesn't have quite the traffic that
Yeah.
DC has, so
Yeah.
that's nice. A little more snow here in Boulder, but DC has a lot of great aspects to it. The culture,
Yeah.
the international flavor to it, the political scene. Rather complicated these days,
Yeah.
but interesting nonetheless. And so yeah, they're great places. So I feel lucky that those have been my two waypoints in my career so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to dovetail on the back of that journey, how did you then transition through to your other jobs and eventually land at Morpheus Space?
Yeah, well, I'll try to be brief here.
Yeah.
We don't have a ton of time, and
Yeah.
it's been
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it's been about a 24-year career so far. So, um, was working in DC, working on spectral imagery projects. There was a software application that was the primary application that we used for both data analysis and software development. It just so happened that the company who developed that software was headquartered in Boulder, Colorado. And
Yeah.
so after I finished my master's degree in Washington, D.C., my wife and I were on our honeymoon in Greece, and we were talking about the future and what we wanted to do next. And we decided at that point that it was a good opportunity to start looking to move. And yeah, this company that was in Boulder, I'd established a relationship with the leadership team within that company. I reached out and let them know, hey, I'm interested in coming back to Boulder. Are there any jobs? And given my background and experience working for arguably their number one customer in the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, we were able to work out a role at the company that worked really well for me. And so we moved back to Boulder at that point. I worked for them for about 8 years. The company ended up getting acquired by L3Harris and then spun out. So, you wouldn't recognize the name of the company, but it's the Envy software for spectral image processing.
Yeah.
And so worked in a range of roles there, sales, business development, and product management were sort of the focus areas. So was there for a while, and then got recruited to come over to a company called Digital Globe, which is now Maxar,
Maxar, yeah.
in about the 2014 timeframe. And they were just starting to embrace the whole notion of cloud computing and artificial intelligence and how that would get applied to satellite imagery to extract useful information and do it at large scale. So given my background with the government and my background in data processing and imagery analysis, they recruited me over to come over and run the go-to-market for this new division that was being stood up, and it was all focused around this topic called geospatial big data. This is back in the days when big data was the in vogue term, big data, and then machine
Yeah.
learning, and now it's artificial intelligence. They're all related topic areas. So came over, joined that team, helped scale that up. That was a lot of fun, a lot of learnings through that whole project. We could do a whole podcast on experience through there. But in 2014, these technologies were just coming online, and we were looking to apply them and scale them out and apply them to satellite imagery, and then build a business around it. So do a couple interesting, sort of challenging um, endeavors, both from the technical standpoint and from the business standpoint. at the same time. So learned a tremendous amount through that experience. Uh, Digital Globe became Maxar. That division got broken apart into different divisions within the broader Maxar organization. Um, had a handful of different roles in, mid-level to senior level management. But I was able to connect with a lot of young companies that were affiliated with Maxar at the time,
Yeah.
who were doing product development off of Maxar imagery and developing, innovative products to extract useful information from imagery. And I got really inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit of these young companies. And, I had at that point worked for, Boeing, L3 Harris, and now Maxar. And I thought, I'd really like to get involved with something smaller
Yeah.
and something, more of, more startup oriented. And I got introduced to the CEO of this young company called Ursa Major. They're a rocket engine company that was just getting started back in about when I met them, it was back in the 2019, 2020 timeframe. And their CEO, Joe Lorienti, and we really hit it off. We got along well. He made it clear that uh, they had about 50 engineers at the company at the time, and really hardly any business people. And they
Yeah.
needed somebody to come in and build out the go-to-market function for the company, sales, business development, government relations, marketing. And I said, well, Joe, I don't know anything about rocket engines. He's like,
Yeah.
we've got plenty of people that understand rocket engines. If you can bring your business skills and experience to the company, then we'll be able to counterbalance that with experts in the tech. And so I came on as Chief Revenue Officer at Ursa Major, helped grow that company. Many of your listeners will be familiar with them. They've done quite well.
Yeah.
It's been inspiring to see the progress they've been able to achieve. So I was with them until about 2023. And then this opportunity with Morpheus Space came along. And I went from being the Chief Revenue Officer at Ursa Major and then came over and joined Morpheus Space in late 2023 as the president of the company. So
Amazing.
so that's where I am today.
Awesome. And tell us about what Morpheus Space do. What do they, how do they fit into the space ecosystem, and where do you see Morpheus kind of evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
Sure thing. Yeah. So Morpheus is a space mobility company. We focus right now on electric propulsion. So we have a product called Go2, which is a field emission electric propulsion system that is a cube that's roughly 10 centimeters on the side. And this technology is intended to support the needs for small nano CubeSat satellites and constellations to be able to have the propulsion they need to perform a wide range of maneuvers. So those would be things like station keeping, collision avoidance, active deorbiting, and then there are some smaller spacecraft that are doing maneuvers in the category of rendezvous and proximity operations. So our technology is a modular system that has a very high level of efficiency that is very, very simple to integrate into the spacecraft that allow spacecraft roughly from the 6U up to about the 250 kilogram range to perform a wide range of maneuvers over the lifetime of their mission. So yeah, we see that market is pretty sizable today,
Yeah.
and it's growing substantially. The number of conversations I have where we talk to satellite integrators who are building out constellations that are measured in the hundreds of units, that happens on a regular basis now, and
Yeah.
it's really exciting. It's really inspiring, but propulsion has been a bottleneck in the industry for many, many years. And so a big reason Morpheus Space exists is to remove that bottleneck. So we're building these propulsion units at pretty substantial scale to enable these satellite integrators to be able to charge forward and quickly deploy these constellations to meet their end customer needs.
Okay. And what's your, I guess, I mean, space mobility is such a vast subject. I guess being more specific on that, on the current landscape of space propulsion systems. What's your thoughts on the current landscape of that? Because I know there's obviously electric, like what you guys do, water, chemical, everything else. What's your thoughts on the current landscape of that, and how do you see that area of the space industry evolving, and what sort of part do you see Morpheus playing in that?
Sure, there are different tools for different jobs.
Yeah,
Morpheus and our go-to propulsion system provides relatively low thrust at very high efficiency. So what this means is we can address the needs of fairly small satellites and ensure that they have the propulsion they need to meet their maneuvering needs for the duration of the mission. There are larger spacecraft which need uh, electric systems with higher levels of thrust. There are other spacecraft which need to perform high energy maneuvers. And so this would trigger a need for things like chemical propulsion.
yeah,
And so there's a wide range of technologies out there. There's a wide range of products and companies out there that are bringing different products to market. And I see a need for many different types of products to support the wide range of end customer use cases. Space mobility is a broad term.
yeah,
But if you think about like moving a satellite, like a 500 kilogram satellite from low Earth orbit to geostationary orbit, we're not the people to call for that type of use case today. We're
mm,
not doing that. We don't provide that kind of technology. There's many other players that are out there that are either bringing products to market today or developing technology to meet that need. Where our sweet spot lies is in helping the people who are building relatively small spacecraft in low Earth orbit meet the needs that they have for maneuvering. And we believe that that's a very strong market today, and it's growing substantially as people scale out constellations. It's almost exclusively in low Earth orbit, and the move from the commercial and from the government space is to smaller and smaller form factors with a
yeah.
proliferated architecture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the satellites are getting smaller and smaller, aren't they? So, like you say, that industry is definitely um, expansive. And I guess on that point as well, you mentioned a few minutes ago around, the space industry is growing. It's really, really exciting. One of the main drivers of this whole podcast is to kind of make space accessible overall. I agree with you. I think space is thriving. It definitely feels like this year as well, it's bounced back in a big way. I think maybe the last couple of years have been slightly challenging with like VCP funding, that type of stuff, but it certainly feels more buoyant. But back to the point, the purpose of this is to try and inspire the next generation of talent to see space as more accessible. So I guess the question is, what do you feel that we could and should be doing at a grassroots level, STEM, classrooms, to try and spread the message of space? Because I don't know about you, you've obviously been space a long time. I've only been doing this for 7 years, but when I speak to friends and family now, as soon as I say space, the immediate perception is astronauts, rocket scientists, astrophysicists. That is it. So how do we kind of spread this message to make space more accessible, to kind of sustain that growth we're talking about? Because it's going to come from the talent, is it? And it doesn't have to exclusively be for the classrooms, by the way, and the next generation kids. I still think there's people that are in different industries now, say automotive, medical devices, as an example, that still feel that space is beyond their reach. So what do you think we could be doing differently?
Yeah, a couple thoughts on this. So one is, how do we broaden the talent pool to be able to draw
Yeah,
more people into the industry? It feels like there's you know, a high wall that you need to get over to be able to um, be considered for a role within the aerospace industry. And I think that's a false assumption. I think what I would do is challenge folks who are hiring managers to think more expansively about the skill sets that they look for the roles that they need to fill. Here's an example. So we have a production facility for our electric propulsion systems in Dresden, Germany, and we need precision machinists and precision manufacturing engineers who can build these products for us. Like we're going to be
Yeah.
churning out hundreds of units per year, so we need people who can build things with precision and a relatively, small space. And so you would commonly think, well, you need a mechanical engineer or a manufacturing engineer who has 10 years of experience in the aerospace industry. That's true, and those skills are valuable, 100%.
Mm.
However, the ability to work in small spaces and have and operate with precision is most important. And so we have seen resumes from dental hygienists that we take very seriously. We've hired precision watchmakers to help us in the production of our go-to systems.
Mm.
I I heard about this from the hiring manager for this team, and I was impressed. And I thought about it for a minute, and I thought that actually makes a ton of sense. It's hard to hire these people if you follow that traditional path and build a very structured, rigid, and traditional job description. I would challenge the hiring managers out there to think more expansively and be willing to consider experiences that maybe aren't on that straight line of, junior mechanical engineer, mid-level mechanical engineer, senior mechanical engineer at aerospace companies, and that means you're qualified for this role. Rather, think about the core skills that are required and are the unique elements of the aerospace industry trainable, right? Because it's the core skills that you're after, not necessarily the industry experience. So that's one point where I think we can, think where I believe we should think as an industry more expansively about how we tap into talent. The second is, I think it's networks are super important in the
Yeah.
industry, and being able to build connections and um, and 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 have conversations with people from different skill sets, from different backgrounds, who have different experiences to encourage them to pursue, alternative paths. I think that's super important. Again, to my point that I was making before, like following the straight line in a career is rarely how it works in my experience. Um, I had a mentor early on in my career who taught me about the squiggly line of one's career.
Yeah.
And she told the story like we're trained early on to think that, you go to school, you get the internship, you get the entry level job, and then you move up through the ranks and eventually you become the CEO. And that's not traditionally how it works. You follow a very roundabout path, but there are people along the way that pull you in different directions. And those of us who have been in the industry for some time, I think it's important that we try to engage with the younger part of the workforce and encourage them to think expansively about the different paths their career could take, or even people who are in university who are thinking about what their career might be, encouraging them to consider a path in the aerospace industry. And it's not just, being a test engineer and like you become a test engineer and that's what you do for your whole career. You could be a test engineer and then you could go help with sales engineering, and then maybe you move over and do some mechanical engineering, and then you take a phase in production, and then all of a sudden you have this well-rounded skill set that puts you in a position to potentially be a program manager and manage an important program. And then that program goes well, and then you could move up and become a general manager. And there's all these different paths that
Yeah.
people can pursue, but I think it's important that the younger generation be exposed to those stories and build the confidence that you can try these different roles out, and it ends up creating a well-rounded career and a well-rounded candidate. And that's ultimately some of the reasons why people end up reaching higher levels of seniority within a company, is because they have that well-rounded experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm smiling as well. It's crazy because when you were going back to when you were saying about the precision engineering, straight away, a company that I used to, where it popped into my head, which were dental hygienist tool manufacturers. And I was thinking it in my head, and then my little voice went, "Shut up, Rich, don't say that. You're going to sound very, very silly and uneducated." And then straight away you said about the dental hygienist. I was like, well, yeah, precision
Got
engineering. But
it.
this is why these conversations are so important, because it's having that expansive mindset of where else can we look? Where else is transferable? And going back to what you were just saying there about the younger generation, I think it's making it relatable to things that they can do and achieve as well. And that kind of segues nicely into the next point on the younger generation and seeing so much kind of like hyper intense success on all these like social media platforms where they see the finish line and like the end goal and all the celebrations. They don't see the hustle, the hard work, the grind, the sacrifice that goes into it. They just see the end goal. What would you say is your hardest lesson learned? I don't want to call it a failure. Hardest lesson learned career to date so far in the job that maybe people out there that are again in a space business or building a company or whatever, that are your greatest lessons learned?
Sure. Yeah, hardest lesson learned, biggest failure. It's tough to put that level of specificity. I've had lots of them. I assure you. So it's hard to pick just one, but one that I think makes for a good story is something I alluded to earlier in our conversation, which was around this idea that we had early on in the adoption of machine learning and computer vision and cloud computing to satellite imagery. So I joined Digital Globe in 2014. I was joined by a number of really bright team members, great team, really smart, young hustlers. I'm part of me wants to give shout outs to a bunch of different names. I'll hold off on doing that. It was a great team, one of the best teams I've ever been a part of. And everyone was very motivated, very energetic, very bright, very capable. And we went after this challenge of building a business around the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning to satellite imagery. And it was a big, bold vision. It was adopting new technology that had never been applied to satellite imagery before. It was really early days. And we tried a number of different product concepts that we introduced to the market. We tried a wide range of business models. We were looking at partnering models. We were looking at developing information products that were created from AI detecting and extracting certain features from satellite imagery. We took a platform-based model where we were selling subscription access to huge volumes of satellite imagery that sat on a platform with AI tools, and you could build your own applications and build your own products. And at the end of the day, we were trying to do too much at the same time. Yeah, and they were all good ideas. None of them were bad ideas. They were all valid. Though to be successful, even with a great team, you need to focus. Like focus is critical. And it's easy to think expansively and say, okay, well, this product concept can get us, 25 million in revenue here, and this product concept, it could get us 50 here, and we could go after this market with this product and that market with that product. And at the end of the day, we were a mile wide and a little more than an inch deep across all of those initiatives. And in retrospect, it may have been a better idea to work those in serially as opposed to in parallel. Because as I said, none of them were failures. They just didn't grow at the rate that we needed to see to be fully convinced that it was the right one.
Yeah.
And then, we ultimately came to the conclusion that, we're going to spin out these different product concepts into different parts of the company. And that's what happened. And we ended up dissolving the division. But the conclusion that I drew was, even if you bring together a great team with a great vision and have a tremendous amount of resources at your disposal, if you fail to focus, there's a very low chance of success. And that's one of the big conclusions that I drew from that experience was, we had a great opportunity and we made a lot of progress, and I'm really proud of what we did achieve. But if we had focused and we had picked one thing that we all rallied behind, then it might have been, a different outcome.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that rings true across any industry, because you focus on something for so long, gain so much momentum in it, and then all these kind of like bright, sparkly objects come out the woodwork and you think, God, this will work really, really well. And then you kind of lose momentum of that key thing that kind of got you the success in the first place. So actually, yeah, having a focus and doubling down on that and staying laser focus is yeah, spot on. And on the other side of that coin, what would you say so far is your biggest achievement to date?
Well, geez, it's kind of a tough question. I'd say my most recent achievement is some news that I'm excited to share with your listeners. We've gone through some changes at Morpheus Space, and when I joined with a gentleman named Daniel Bach, who is the founder of the company, and really led the company through the original vision up through raising a series of rounds and building technology, taking it to market. Daniel made the decision to step down as CEO and is now the CTO and managing director of our German business unit. And he asked if I would step in as CEO of the company. And this was a big decision by Daniel. We really need to be focusing on the business aspects of the company, and he comes from a deep technical background in the technology. So it's a natural transition and shift for Daniel to step into a CTO role. And I was honored and humbled to be asked by our board of directors to take on the role of CEO. So that took effect about a week ago. And so I don't know if it's my biggest accomplishment. You might have to ask me in a few years if it was a big success, but I'd say it's a recent success and a recent achievement that I'm really excited about. And I think we're set up for success here. We've got a good product, we've got a great team, and the market is sizable and growing. And so we're in a good spot. And yeah, it's an exciting new opportunity that I'm taking on.
Awesome, great news. Congratulations.
Thank you, Richard.
Excellent. And what you look, I guess, from transitioning from your role now from president to CEO, what are the main kind of things you're looking forward to in terms of the changes now to your role transitioning into that CEO position? What's the, I guess, extra responsibilities or new things that you're going to be focusing on that you're most excited to kind of get stuck into right away?
Yeah, I am really excited about leading the team and bringing our product out to market. So, as we were getting started, we were talking about the trade show circuit. So I have a background in sales and product management. So being able to participate in those discussions with our partners and our customers globally and really assisting our sales team in scaling out the adoption of our product is really exciting. We have an ambitious roadmap that we're working through from a technology standpoint. And so I'm looking forward to partnering with Daniel on the development of that roadmap. And he really brings the technical depth and strength around the technology. And I bring more of a business-focused mentality around what the market is looking for and what the demand signal looks like from the market. So marrying kind of that demand signal with what we think we can bring to market and develop is pretty darn exciting. So I'd say those are two areas where I'm really looking forward to putting my energy into.
That's the winning formula, isn't it? Having someone that you can run the business with that has that I mean, you're clearly technical yourself as well, but has that technical engineering CTO mindset and someone that can run a business as well. I think there's probably a few space companies where the entire DNA of the business is ran by engineers and kind of could do with that business mentality as well to take the company forward. So yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys can do.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Yeah. It's I think it's an important evolution that young companies need to go through. Of course, you need to build technology first and foremost.
Yeah.
When you're starting a new initiative or a new company, though it needs to be balanced with the demand that comes from the market. And over time, technology needs to be balanced with the business skills and the business experience to be able to build a well-rounded company and actually be able to get products into the hands of customers all around the world. So it's one thing to build great tech. It's another thing to get it in the hands of people who need it. And so those are both hard to do. And you need to do the first one first. You need to build the tech first, but then you need to start feathering in more business-oriented aspects to a company to really scale it out and make it successful.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks so much for joining us. final question today. I want to be appreciative of your time. It's kind of a two-part question, really, but just going on this whole theme that we've been talking about, those people that are kind of looking into the space sector and want to get involved. What is the first part of the question is there any kind of resources that you identified throughout the years? Obviously, you had mentors and things like this that people could kind of gain access to now that are looking to segue into the space sector. And the second part is if you could kind of distill down all of your experience, all of your information that you've gained over the years, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give to those people wanting to get into the space sector this year and beyond?
Yeah, well, one of the great resources that's out there, there's all sorts of good recruiting firms that can help young people get connected in with the companies that need different levels of talent. EVONA is a great, organization to get plugged into. I know you guys are well established with lots of different connection points to a whole host of companies. So I would say for someone just getting into the industry, reach out, find your EVONA representative, and that could be a good entry point. I'd say the second part to the question, the piece of advice, I wouldn't be where I'm at without mentors that I had along the way. And I have been incredibly fortunate to work with and for a number of really generous, bright, and hardworking people in my career. And I'd say nothing's affected my career more substantially than the 4 or 5 mentors that I've had along the way. And I forever have a debt of gratitude to those mentors. And I'd say for young folks entering the workforce, if you can get connected to somebody who cares about your career and cares about your future, pay attention and listen and work with them. And they're going to get as much value out of it as you will. But it may not be immediately obvious in the early days, the value that a great mentor can bring to you. But where I'm sitting right now, and I look back on the history of my career, and there's no way that I would have any chance to achieve the kinds of things that I've been fortunate to be a part of without great mentors who were there looking out for me and giving me advice. And many of them I still have on speed dial, people that I worked with 15, 20 years ago when I just moved back out to Boulder and started working for a software company. There's a number of people that I met through that experience, when I was in my mid-20s. And, I'm not in my mid-20s anymore, but I still call those mentors, and they still take my call and still help. So finding a great mentor is not always an easy thing to do, but when you find one, hang on tight and maintain that relationship. And then, as you move through your career, look for opportunities to pay it forward and give back to, the industry in a way that, hopefully somebody at a future point can say, hey, I had this great mentor, and, they're thinking of you. So that's how I like to think about it now. I'm still searching out for mentors, people who can guide me in this new step that I've taken, but then also, looking out for the next generation and seeing who I can help along and coach and encourage them on the path they're on.
Yeah, incredible. Do you know what? I won't go down the rabbit hole on it now, but I feel like I could do an entire segment just on mentors because it's clearly a common theme. Everybody I've done this podcast with, it's the same thing. It's the mentors piece that comes up. And I think where that kind of maybe younger next generation struggle is like they don't know where to start with it. Like what defines a good mentor? How do I find a mentor? So we could do a whole piece on that. But what I'm saying is it's clearly a very, very important thing. And also I think it can be seasonal throughout your life that you have different mentors for different stages of your personal and career development too. But it's it's clearly a really, really important point. So
super valuable. Yeah. No one gets to, their ultimate goal on their own. So look for people who can help you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been awesome. Congratulations again on the awesome news, becoming CEO of Morpheus Space. Great. And hope to see you on the event circuit soon in Colorado or Utah.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you out there, Richard. Thanks for having me on the show, and appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
Cool. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.